but you have to take a step back and say, I'm not going to have this anymore. So what am I going to do for me so I can move forward and be the guy or gal that I want to be?
Welcome back to the show, everybody. In this week's episode, we have the pleasure of speaking with Don McAlister, a retired Command Sergeant Major who deployed 5 times to Iraq and Afghanistan with the Army. Don shares about his lengthy military career, his experiences in combat overseas, incredible stories surrounding his love for metal music, and where his life has taken him since. This is an awesome episode with Don. We hope you all enjoy. Also, just a quick update. We will be missing next week's episode as it is our official book launch of the 20-year war. We have a lot of news media press that we're going to be doing next week, and we have the official launch on September 11th at the National Veterans Memorial and Museum in Columbus, Ohio. So stay tuned for that. We'll share more news, and we will get back to our schedule of episodes after next week. Thank you, guys. Real stories, real heroes, for a real cause. This is Never Left Behind, the podcast. Hey, Don, how are you?
Doing good. How about you guys?
We're doing awesome. It's awesome to have you on the show. I'm trying to think back to the exact time frame that you and I met up, and I want to say, was that March? Was it February or March?
I think it's February or March out in Raleigh. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So for people listening, obviously we met up with Don and photographed and interviewed him and his story. And he's one of the veterans featured in the 20-year war photo book, which I believe you just received, didn't you?
Yep. I got it right here.
Oh, that's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah,
well, hopefully you're enjoying it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's got some really good stories, man. Like, it's awesome because a lot of these veterans, don't get to even tell a little bit of their life to, people outside the military. So I think it's pretty awesome what you guys are doing with that. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah. And we're just honored that you shared your story with us, because I think you've got, obviously a lengthy military career and quite the story of showing and shaping the typical narrative of what a veteran is, and instead kind of dispelling a lot of the myths, because I think you are clearly your own person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, it's not cut and dry of, what a veteran should be or can be.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think Don might be like the only metal rocker kind of guy we have in the book.
Yeah, I'm a metal fan. People are comic book nerds and all that crap. I'm a heavy metal nerd, man. So
that's cool. I definitely want to get into that in this episode and talk more about it.
So, obviously with a lot of things happening, a lot of recent events, we were touching on it just briefly. You said, you're doing fine, all things considered, but I know it's been a little chaotic for you. What's been going on with everything in Afghanistan? Like, how have you been processing it, or have you been reaching out to people? Have people been reaching out to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, I think, for all of us who are over there, especially those of us who have a lot of time over there. I've had a lot of guys reach out to me and ask me if it was worth it.
Mm-hmm.
They look up to me, and they I guess respect my opinions and all. And what I've tried to get across to all these kids, I say kids because I'm the old dude in the Army, so that's a habit. But what I try to get across to everybody, man, is we all went over there. We all did what we were asked to do. We all stepped up, when other people didn't. And at the end of the day, if we know that we did what we were supposed to do, then the only thing we can do now is just, take care of each other and know that we did our part. And, like I used to tell guys, in the military, they teach you, the youngest private needs to know the mission and all that stuff, right? I'm like, yeah, that's good, but you know what the young private really needs to know? What his job is. So if he's a saw gunner, he needs to know how to shoot a saw. If he's a rifleman, he needs to know how to be the best rifleman there is, because if he does his job, then the mission that he's a part of gets accomplished. And I would tell you, man, it hurts because of the way it all happened. From a senior leader's perspective, and I won't do the armchair quarterback thing. I can just tell you, for me, what hurt me was not that we pulled out of Afghanistan or any of that stuff. It was how we did it.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and we didn't, we, the fighting force, did everything that we were asked to do and then some. And
Mm-hmm.
I think most of us, especially guys, as we became senior, we knew that there was no end in sight to Afghanistan. And eventually we're going to pull out. And then, I hope I'm wrong, but I think it's going to hit us again at some point. It may be,
Yeah.
Like my son-in-law, he's in the military right now, like it's going to hit again. And what hurts about it is the fact that, like a guy like me, right? So for example, the first time I went to Afghanistan, I was a first sergeant. Iraq from squad leader on up. And, as a first sergeant, you're in charge of 100 and some odd paratroopers. You kind of have the blinders off. So you understand that what we're going to do over there is not about the strategic mission or none of that crap. It's to find bad guys, find terrorists, take them out, do our job and get everybody back home and prepare for the next one a year later, and for, the way I look at it, and I've talked to a lot of guys since this has been going on, is like, like, for example, if I'm a private and it's my first deployment in Afghanistan, or I only did one deployment, right? And then I seen, like, for me, my second deployment to Afghanistan was hell. For those guys to go through that and to see dudes blown to bits left and right and everything, and then see all this and hear people on social media and all this stuff saying we failed. We didn't fail shit. Excuse my language. We did our part. We did our job. Our leaders failed. And I would also say this about Afghanistan, if any of the younger guys are listening, or gals, even me, I was a command sergeant major. My last time in Afghanistan, I was a sergeant major in RC East. And if you would have asked me anything about our strategic policy or anything like that, I had no clue, because at the end of the day, I really didn't care. Because all I cared about was making sure our troops were trained, that we were going over to do a job, we were taking out the threat or training who we had to, and then we were coming home. And when you see all these people on there talking strategy and talking all this stuff, when their span of control was maybe like 6 guys or 16 guys, it's like, dude, for me, my advice to you is, especially if you're like an influencer or something, these kids look up to you. Let them know that they did what they were supposed to do. Don't get into all the other BS, man, because, talking about it the way a lot of people are doing online and on, doing the divisiveness and all that stuff, it's like, dude, nothing's going to change from that. The only thing it's going to do is make the kids, and I say kids, I mean, hell, they're all, 30s and crap, but make them think that, my buddy lost his right arm for nothing, when at the end of the day, none of us during this war joined the military to, like, truthfully fight for our government. We joined because we felt like we needed to serve, and we saw men and women over there getting messed up, and we wanted to be a part of the force that brings them home, if that makes sense to you guys. So that's kind of my take on it, man. I don't get into the politics of it and all that stuff, because we can talk that all day long. The only thing I would say about it, like I said, man, is our leadership from the top down failed. This pullout, the plan. But our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, they did their job and then some, and they got nothing to regret, because at the end of the day, they kept me safe, they kept my family safe, they kept you guys safe for the last 20 years, and that's what it was about. So
that's a really, I think, interesting way of looking at it. I mean, and obviously, like you said, this whole episode's not to go into recent events. They've been shared enough, everybody's heard more about it, but it's interesting to hear your perspective on it.
I mean, I'm glad you've had the same sort of response to it as well, especially people that have reached out to me individually. And what's interesting especially the veterans, like, well, what do you think about it? Was it all worth it? All those types of questions that usually crop up. And it's like, yeah, you did your job. Don't worry about what has happened years later.
Mhm.
You couldn't have changed anything that happened these past couple of weeks. There's nothing more you could have done that would have changed the outcome with the plan that was laid for
Mhm.
this pullout. There's nothing individually we could have done. But especially the civilians that I've been talking to, like family members, things like that, that are just trying to get an understanding of like why this all happened. It's such a difficult thing to explain to them because, to your point, we have our individual perspectives for the people who are fighting on the ground. There's going to be the talking heads, the news folks, the politicians, everything that are going to talk about this big picture and ideals of, what happened in the region and things like that. And I can talk on that a little bit, but honestly, every time I circle back to, you just won't really understand it unless you were there. Like, it really doesn't impact you the same way unless you were there. And that's just, people need to be okay with that being the answer. Like, there's always people trying to overanalyze and assess and understand exactly, why one person did one thing or another. It doesn't matter. What matters is we did our jobs. We excelled at our jobs. We got people back as much as we could. And we were there regardless, even if we had people in our platoon or in our company or in our battalion that were injured or killed. We were there for them. Doesn't matter.
But I will say this before we move on. Don, from your perspective, it's pretty incredible though to see how many veterans got together to like jump into going back over there and pulling these people out like way faster than what our government could do.
Yeah. It's that was for me being a sergeant major, looking at that, I respect the hell out of the guys for doing it. But if I'd have been the guy on the ground trying to handle it, I would have been so pissed off at them, because ultimately that just makes more work for me. But at the same time, what were we doing to get those people out? And I say we as the United States. Now, and I will say this just because I'm a combat soldier, man. Like, my whole adult life I spent fighting. And I mean, I never once fought in Afghanistan for the people of Afghanistan. And people have asked me that, and I tell them, no, that was never in my mission statement. I went to Afghanistan to take out pockets of terrorism to keep them from coming over here.
Yep.
When I went to Iraq, our mission was to liberate Iraq from a tyrannical government and try to give them free elections and all that stuff, which ultimately we started doing in Afghanistan. But at the end of the day, I feel for the people over there. I truly do. But, I'm not going to lie to anybody and say that I fought for the people of Afghanistan, because I didn't. I fought for my guys and the soldiers. And then, when you look at all this stuff, like, guys like me are going to have a different perspective than, like, for example, a civil affairs guy or a special forces guy, because to me, when we got teamed up with A&A or whoever, those guys were just a thorn in my side and in the way, but then you have other elements that literally became friends and, with all these guys. And I totally get it, man. I just would tell you, I'm glad those guys did what they did. I think they did what was right, but I also think that it could have been really bad from a senior leader's perspective and seeing, because I mean, we got lucky on that one, to tell you the truth, in my opinion, from just from a guy who's been up there with the blinders off and kind of sees it. But man, the way things are today, I don't fault anybody for stepping up and trying to make something happen, because, there's so many people that are, for lack of a better term, keyboard warriors and all that stuff, but they would never, they would never grab their freaking sack and get out there and do what those guys did. And to tell you the truth, it would have felt good to be over there and doing what they're doing. I'm just thinking of it from a senior leader's perspective, like troop commander on the ground. It would have made more work for me, because I'd have had to figure out how to vet all these guys too and figure out all this stuff. So
that's a lot, man. Well, it's definitely a lot of work. Like, you saw how many people were getting sent through and then having to be sent back out because they didn't have the right forms or whatever.
Yeah. And I mean, it's the nature of the beast. But I will say this: I was in Montana last weekend when the bombing happened, right?
Mhm.
And you know, like for people out there, man, just focus on the soldiers right now, man. Focus on the
Mhm.
soldiers and the Marines and all those guys that were over there. I mean, hell, I can't give any information, but my son-in-law is in a high-speed group and he was there, and he saw some just in the short amount of time he was there, he saw a bunch of crazy shit,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and the other thing I would say, especially to like us guys who have been in combat, been getting shot at left and right and all. Imagine being that kid at Kabul airport that's sitting there pulling guard and seeing something happen to a lady outside the wire and you're not allowed to do anything about it.
Mhm.
Mm.
And then
Yep.
you have to come home and live with that.
Yep.
That's the
That's
thing.
hard.
Yeah. So, like, especially those kids over there, because, I live right outside of Fort Bragg. I mean, hell, there's a brigade from Fort Bragg there. I mean, they need to, they need to know, even those guys, even though it didn't work out the way that anybody wanted it to, they did their job. They did
Mhm.
what they were asked to do. And, and I tell you, I've been in some crazy situations, but nowhere in my psyche would I ever have wanted to been in the situation that those kids were at Kabul airport. It was
No.
just
No.
terrible from the outside in, looking in.
Mhm. I want to let's go back because I want to, for people listening, I want to hear more of how your military career began in the Army. Like, what got you to want to join the military to begin with?
Well, I mean, I always make jokes and say it was the longest day I watched with John Wayne and stuff like that, which that was a big part of it because I wanted to be a soldier because they were cool on TV. But not like growing up, my grandpa was a World War II vet. I had a couple uncles that were Korea, Vietnam vets.
Oh wow.
My dad missed Vietnam like by months, basically. I was born
Mm.
in 73. He was 19. So I think he got the draft paperwork, but then they stopped it because they started pulling everybody out. So he never
Mhm.
went. But what I don't know, man. Like ever since I was a little kid, I just always wanted to go in and serve. Now, nowhere in my mind, or if anybody would have even asked me, would I ever thought that I would have stayed in almost 25 years, But for me, it was something that I just had to do, and I had to see, if I could do it. And so I went in July '92, went infantry, and yeah, man. I mean, the majority of my career has been spent with the 82nd Airborne, but I was also in the 25th, 10th Mountain, and I did a stint in the Old Guard in DC.
Mm.
Uh,
Wow.
and I think one of the best things that ever happened to me, as far as soldier wise goes, was being sent to the Old Guard in the mid '90s, because I did funerals in Arlington Cemetery, and I did all these things, and it was all discipline, 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 and it made me understand that one day, that might be me that these kids are carrying,
Mhm.
and what we're doing out there is not for the guy in the casket; it's for his family, and
Mhm.
and it was just for me, man. It was one of the best things that I could have done. I got what do you call it? Recruited out of airborne school. Didn't know anything. I was a little Joe. I thought it was like some high speed stuff, and went, which it was rough, but I wouldn't say high speed. It was a lot of high shining, but nah, man, it was a really good for me. I think for the rest of my career, it molded me as far as understanding that even if something doesn't make sense or there's a call made by somebody, you know, you can second guess it, you can do whatever, but you do it after the fact. Because
Mhm.
if you're trying to do it before or while the mission's going on, then you're going to fail. Um,
Yep.
Yeah.
and it just taught me that every minute detail was just so important. And guys that know me throughout my career, they, basically I was the uniform, haircut, everything guy. But to me, that's what kept guys alive. You know, um, but yeah, I mean, so
That
I did,
Arlington cemetery though is incredible.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we
it
went
was,
there in the heart of winter, and it was like pouring rain, and we didn't have an umbrella, and we just walked around
freezing rain
and got drenched. But it was cool spending a couple hours walking around there through all the different rows, and they expanded every year. But
yeah.
Well, you know, when I was there in the mid '90s, Section 60, where most of the GWAT is buried now, didn't have anything in it.
Yep.
No, I think we walked through 60 and 61 and all that.
Yep. By the columbarium where they do the cremations and all. But I mean, hell, I have 8 buddies that are buried in Section 60 now. You know, I mean, it's crazy the way things work out. But yeah, man, I mean, so I was in the old guard, then I re-enlisted to go to Hawaii because it sounded cool and it looked nice, and then everything going on with the world, and then September 11th hitting, I was actually getting out of the Army, was going to do like most young staff sergeants, going to go be a wildlife and fisheries agent. You know, it's either that or
there you go.
border patrol or cop, or go to school. And then, you know, stuff changed, and, you know, I told my wife, I was like, I can't get out, and re-enlisted, go to 82nd. Got to the 82nd, less than 6 months later, we were deploying, and then the rest is history, man. I did most of my time there, except for I left in 2011 to go to the Sergeant Major Academy, and they sent me to 10th Mountain from there, which when I was in 10th Mountain, all I ever heard from all the other NCOs and the officers was, "You're 82nd isms." I'm like, no, it's Army isms, man, not 82nd isms. But yeah, I've, you know, I got 5 combat deployments, man. 3 in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq. In OF1 in the invasion, I got messed up really bad, got wounded, was in Walter Reed for months, fought a med board, stayed in, and then deployed again less than a year later, and then the rest is history, just kept deploying. Because
interesting.
I tell people when they ask me why didn't I do the medical retirement route and all that stuff, and truthfully, what I know after I knew, you know, back then was if I would have, I'd be a statistic right now. I don't think I would have survived it, you know.
Wow. Do you think, because I mean 9/11 is what inspired you to stay in, but was it just a drive to want to be there with everybody that you'd have been serving with, just to be involved in what clearly was about to be, you know, our largest conflict that the U.S. has been in since, you know, Desert Storm?
Yeah, man. I mean, for me, it was like I'd been in so long. I mean, I was a young staff sergeant, and I knew that the war was happening. Like, I mean, there was no getting around that. And I knew that conventional units in Hawaii at that time, there was no way we were going to Iraq or Afghanistan, because it was all Pacific theater. So I was like, screw that, I'm going. And I knew that if I either went to the 82nd or the 101st, that they were going to deploy. And I didn't want to be a leg anymore, so I went to the 82nd, because I was a leg in the old guard in 25th. I mean, I got airborne school when I was a private, but yeah, man. I mean, it was, and I'll tell you, for me, it was getting to the 82nd and getting into a unit that, like, I had a first sergeant in Hawaii that told me, he's like, when you get there, man, it's like a locomotive going 120 miles an hour that never freaking slows down. He's like, if you can handle it there, you can handle it anywhere. And he was right. But at the same time, I will say, being there and going to war with the 82nd Airborne Division, there's just something about it, man. The lineage, the heritage, you know, guys just like, they step up, man. It might be because they're all touched in the head from jumping out of airplanes, but they step up when they need to step up. And I love it, man. I mean, obviously you can tell, but
it's a different, because you're a 2-time volunteer if you decide to go airborne, right? At least a 2-time volunteer. It's like, you have to be crazy enough to already volunteer to fall out of perfectly good airplanes.
Yeah.
But then, so everybody in that unit already has a different mentality than the rest of the military. Anybody who's a leg, you know, not airborne or hasn't qualified for or volunteered for something else, you know, it's already a different mindset.
Yeah, it it's such a different world, man. And like I said, when I left division and went to the Sergeant Major Academy, and then they sent me to 10th Mountain, uh, I got to say the 82nd all the time and all that stuff, and I'm like, it's not the 82nd, man. It's the Army. You know,
Mhm.
you got to get shit done. You know, so but you know, man, the other thing too, and I mean, for me, I don't know how the stars aligned, but I competed for CSM, and while I was deployed with 10th Mountain, I got selected to come back to the 82nd and take the same battalion in which I did 2 deployments as a first sergeant in, which was one of the greatest things that ever happened to me. But I will tell you this, and for any of you out there listening that are staying in, you know, for me, I had those deployments, you know, all the stuff that I'd done, um, all my deployments with the 82nd, except for the 10th Mountain. And I come back to be the command sergeant major, and All American Week happened, right? And we had to contact the Gold Star family members and all that stuff.
Mm.
And truthfully, at that point, throughout my career, I had never really faced all the losses and all the pain and everything. And I honestly, as a command sergeant major, I was terrified to meet these families, man. You know,
Mhm.
because a lot of them were my guys, and I had written letters and everything else, but you know, to finally slow down and be like, oh crap, you know, I actually got to do, because you know, we can all say whatever, but a lot of us, we lock it all back here and we kind of hide from it, you know, like
Mhm.
the keeps me going, it keeps me not focused on it and all that stuff. But it was, for me, it was one of the things I really needed though. Um, and I really didn't understand it until I got out.
Mhm.
Uh, and then I know it's kind of off topic, kind of in topic, and I'll just throw this out there because I get asked this all the time. Why did I never go the special forces route or any of that stuff? And the reason I didn't, man, and I'll tell you out there, like I got plenty of brothers over there, and I love them to death. But like I went to combat as a weapons squad leader, platoon sergeant, first sergeant, sergeant major. If I would have went to combat with the special forces, I would have been Mac, 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 Mac. If that makes sense to
Mhm.
you.
Yeah.
I just, you know, I had that experience, and you know, the guys were what kept me going and kept me alive, and I like putting boot in their ass, so it just worked out for me. But yeah, man, dudes ask me that all the time because I'm all tatted up and shit, and I'm like, nah, I'm just an old grunt, man. I'm not special, you know.
If it helps, I think Dan here didn't realize he was going into special operations.
No, I didn't. I had no idea what I was doing.
I know that sounds really strange to hear.
Yeah, but not,
Uh,
but like I'm saying, man, I mean, the way I look at it is everybody has a path and everybody has a job to do,
Yeah.
and you know, if I'd have chose a different route, who knows where I'd be. And at the same time, you know, like um, I don't think I would have been happy there because, like I said, man, when you go to combat, like major combat, like an invasion against an army, and you're in charge of a 9-man uh, weapon squad with machine guns that you actually use for real and do that shit, then you see that this 9-man weapon squad can accomplish any freaking thing, but they can't do it if they don't have the right guy here actually giving them direction. And
mhm.
Mhm.
and it just felt right, man. Plus, I think getting wounded was a lot of it too. You know, like I'm gonna stay in the fight, blah blah blah. But yeah, man, I just throw it out there because people ask me all the time, man, like all
Yeah.
the time, and I'm like, no, I was like, who knows? Hell, I might have not made it, man. But I just
Mhm.
I never tried, never really. The thought never even really entered my mind, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because I've mentioned this several times as a civilian. You know, before I guess becoming more educated on working on the 20-year war book, and then being around Dan and guys like yourself, when I thought of veterans, and maybe this is like the whole video game in Hollywood that kind of portrays it this way, they look like you. Like I literally just pictured that most veterans were bearded, tattooed, like badass kind of guys, just like killing machines, and I never knew going into it, like interviewing all these veterans and seeing that they're just everyday people, men and women, just like myself, that there really is a massive stereotype out there.
Yeah, dude. I think a lot of it too is because, when we do get out, one, we have all those rules all those years, so we can't, hair and beard and all that crap.
Mm-hmm.
But two, I think it's just, when we transition out, we're trying to find our real identity. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I mean, look at me, dude. Like, I talk to people all the time, and when I talk to kids or anybody, I don't go up to them like, I'm a retired sergeant major. I just talk to them. And then when they eventually find out, they're like, "Oh, they never guess you're a sergeant major." I was like, "Yeah, because I don't still freaking have a high and tight and tuck my shirt in." And I told myself when I was getting out that that part of me was done. Like
Mm-hmm.
because especially in this world, in the veteran community, like if guys see that I'm just me, especially all the kids that look up to me, then they're gonna be like, "Hey, Sergeant Major's got a freaking mohawk. He's got earrings. He's got this. Like, he's doing whatever the hell he wants." And that's the whole point, man. Is like with that, what I tell a lot of people when they ask, I'm like, veterans, their whole life that they were in, they served everybody but themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get out, and the hardest thing for most of us to understand is we need to serve ourselves a little bit.
Yep.
And it took me a long time to figure that out. Like, even if you
You,
look
you
at
got to be authentic to you.
Mm-hmm.
well, my first year out of the Army, you could look at me and I still kind of had that. I was still trying to hold on to it, if that makes sense to you. Like, I had a little beard, but it was nice and short and groomed up, and it just, I don't know, man. I just finally got to the point to where, if I'm somewhere and I see some kids, I'm gonna know they're veterans. I'm gonna know whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I can just go up and bullshit with them. They know I'm some old guy. They know I'm a veteran. I mean, hell, you can tell with the tattoos. But honestly, when you go up and talk to a retired command sergeant major, you don't expect him to have a mohawk and earrings and freaking, wearing a heavy metal shirt and shit. And then you're like, holy fuck, this guy's cool. Nah, he's not cool. He's just himself, man. And
Yep.
and I think that's important because we have that identity that while we're in, and a lot of that identity, it's not ours. It's what we were molded into.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get out, man, you just got to be you, and you got to do stuff for you, and that's hard for all of us to comprehend, man.
Yeah, it's something you hit basically right on what I put in the book, in kind of the intro in my section when I'm talking about it, is the
Yeah.
self-reflection. It's the, like, looking back at yourself and what your service meant, but then also paving the way for you to become yourself. Just be you. Don't
Yeah.
be anything else. So you don't have to be defined by whatever stereotypes that are out there. You don't have to be defined by your service. You can just be you. Yes, your service has shaped a lot of aspects of, like, how you act and how you perform and how you have drive and all those other things, but you can still just be you.
Yeah. And man, with that, like, what I truly believe now, is I've been almost 5 years retired now, is that if you can face you and start becoming you, then you can survive this life.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can't let that identity go, like, because the way I look at it, man, is that was me. That's who I was. That's who I had to be. And for all those years, that's who I wanted to be. But now that I'm out, man, I can be me. I can do what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I can, obviously, people, you got to make a living and all that crap, but I'm at the point in my life now to where if I'm not happy doing something, I'm going to do something else.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, man, like, the, I think the other hard part about just learning to be you is, especially if you're a leader in the military, is everybody expects you to be this guy,
Mm-hmm.
and guys ask me for advice all the time on leadership in the military, and I'm like, two things. Number one, remember you're not their friend, you're their leader. And number two, be seen. And then, like I tell guys now that I'm not your leader anymore, I can be your friend. And and that's a hard thing for guys to understand too, because, and I get it all the time. You probably do too, man, from guys that work for me. Like I'll get messages like, "You were such an asshole. I hated you for this one thing," and I don't remember, but they're like, "It molded me for the rest of my Army career, and now I understand why you did it." And that's why I tell them, I'm like, if I'm your leader, man, I can't be your friend, but at the same time, I also can't take the shit personal. And that's why, like, I know you guys get it. Like if I saw a kid jacked up and I scuffed him up for a minute or whatever, I'd walk away if the deficiency was fixed. I didn't forget about it, because it was never personal, it was business. But it's important to me now, because truthfully, man, it keeps me alive, is being a guy that, you guys, these guys, everybody wants to talk to, not some guy that's like, "I was a command sergeant major, I did all this, blah, blah, blah." Like, who gives a shit, man? Like, you did a job, you did it till you retired, even though they call it retirement, it ain't enough to live on, but you still get something. But, you stayed in, okay, got it. But it doesn't make you who you are, man. Like me, I was a metalhead before I joined the Army. It was a metalhead while I was in. I mean, hell, I had long hair for a while after I got out. It's like, just do you, man. And if you can learn to do you, then you can see those things that are pushing against you, or those demons that are there that are just stopping everything, stopping the happiness and all that stuff. And if you take a step back and do you and look at you, you can see that asshole, and then you can control him and he can't control you. If that makes sense.
It's crazy too, because for people that are listening, Don was, I think, one of the few veterans that sent me like a photo dump of like deployment photos. Like most people, I think, would send, 2 to 3 to 4. I think I got like 30 from Don, and I was like, oh, sweet, I got a lot to choose from for the book. But I remember going through and just seeing every photo of like just clean shave, short hair, and then meeting up with you in person. I'm like, damn, dude, you look so much different.
Yeah. Yeah. I get told I look a lot younger now, which is cool. Most people look older with a beard, but I look younger, I guess.
Yeah.
But and believe it or not, man, those pictures, I never took pictures on deployment. That's just stuff guys sent me over the years, man. That's the other thing I tell guys now too. If you're in, all you guys got cell phones and cameras, take a shitload of pictures, because you look back on it and there's so much stuff that you're afraid you'll forget because you don't have a visual, something to look at. And then, and it's also hard because if you're a leader, you're focused on everything else except for taking pictures, but yeah,
it's
man.
interesting because you definitely see that now. Like, for instance, I think last week I reshared a video from a Marine who was over there, and he made like a whole 15-minute montage with like music behind it and everything, of like showing like what's going on behind the wire and everything there. And you're like, well, that's kind of crazy, because I don't think I've ever seen footage like that in depth.
No, and like, for example, when I was a first sergeant deployed, like we had to take photos for the 82nd yearbook, right, from the deployment. So, and this will blow your guys' mind, this is how much of an asshole I am, but I had to do it, is I made the platoon sergeants turn in every photo to me, and I went through them before I sent them to division, because I wanted to make sure that they all looked squared away, their uniforms were right, they were doing all the right shit. And I remember one of my platoon sergeants was like, "First sergeant, nobody really cares." I was like, "I do." And he's like, "But why?" I'm like, "Because perception's reality, man. If you look jacked up, then you are jacked up. If you look squared away, you are squared away. And I'm not going to send something to somebody above me that I haven't QAQC'd first." And now that same guy told me that, "I understand, because he's a sergeant major now." He's like, "Oh, I get it." I'm like, "Yeah, you get it, don't you?" Because I will say this too, man, for those of you listening, I got my ass chewed a lot in the Army, but never as many times as I did when I was a command sergeant major. People think it's all gravy. Hell no, because the odds are stacked against you. So dudes are going to do dumb stuff, and you're going to get your ass chewed.
I was going to say, if anything, you're just covering your ass.
Yeah,
covering their ass.
Well, it's the typical thing is like, as a leader, and especially at the top, you are responsible for everything, your guys do and fail to do. So anytime anybody would screw up, every time Sergeant Major gets a phone call. Somebody gets a DUI, Sergeant Major gets a phone call. Somebody got in a fight, Sergeant Major gets a phone call. Somebody didn't show up to a formation and was found by the cops a day later or whatever, Sergeant Major gets a phone call.
Jeez.
Yep.
That phone's ringing all night.
Yeah, like some weekends, man, I'd be like, just let tonight be the night I sleep all the way through, you know.
I want to go
But,
back and dive a little bit into your individual. We don't have to go through all 5, but I'm curious to hear some of your deployments. What was it like to be in Iraq kind of during the initial invasion or just a couple years after?
Well, I'll tell you, man, the invasion was, it was what I would say to people, like, what you expect war would be. You know what I mean? Like, there was an army, we were going in, we were shocking on them, we were facing them face to face, and we were a much better shot, so we kicked the crap out of them, you know. But what I will also say about the invasion in Iraq was like, it was, you know, it was old army still. Technically, we didn't have all the high speed stuff that everybody's got now. You know, we were still in there. If you're in a regular infantry unit, you ain't wearing Oakleys. Where do you think you're SF? You know, stuff like that. But it was, you know, I truthfully, what it taught me was that everything we were taught about combat was like BS, because we own the night, right? But guess when we attacked? At daybreak. Because they said they don't fight at night. You know, I'm like, what the hell? You know, like, but it was the invasion, I'll tell you, it was like nothing I ever could have imagined. And we, like I said, man, we kicked the crap out of the bad guys. I mean, hell, I was a weapons squad leader. I don't know if anybody's ever seen the James Dietz print, The Bridges of Freedom, but it's technically, it's my squad in the picture.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a cool battle print, but what he did was take a bunch of different pictures and put them together. But you know, our first big, so basically, and it's public knowledge now, but back in February of 03, I was in White Falcon 2nd 325 and 82nd, and we got the mission to deploy with 75th Ranger Regiment and jump in and secure BIOP. So Baghdad International. So when we deployed in civilian clothes. We had no clue where we were going. My wife didn't know. It was only my battalion. The rest of our brigade deployed later to Kuwait, and we were there. And you know, our mission, we were going to jump into BIOP. And obviously, the Thunder Run and the sandstorms and all that crap. Basically, Third ID made it to it and bypassed everything. And I love my Third ID brothers, but they made a lot of more work for us. But you know, they got there, so the jump got scratched at like an hour basically. So we got on the same birds that we were going to jump out of, no seats, none of that crap. Flew into Talil, Iraq, linked up with a part of the brigade. We were brigade minus. Basically, every battalion had to leave a company back, and yeah, and then we were told, hey, the Fedayeen is in the town of Asamoah. They're 4,000 plus strong. They're coming up. They're trying to close the 2 bridges to keep supplies from getting the Third ID. So you guys are going to go in and open those bridges. And we were like, okay. And then we gacked on the back of freaking LMTVs for like a day. And we get there, and then, you know, we get there at night, and you're seeing the shock and awe come in and all. And then we're like, what time are we hitting? Blah, blah. They're like, daybreak. I was like, what the shit? You know, like, we're hitting them at daybreak. We got nods and lasers and crap, you know. But anyway, yeah. You know, my squad, we were support by fire element at Bridge 1, and we locked it down. I was, for my company, me and one of my AGs were the first ones across Highway 5. And I guess, not to get into all the war stories, but for me, the coolest thing was we crossed. I started looking at spots to lay in the guns, and we did what we had to do. And it seemed like every window across the river was shooting at us, right? Because they were all dug in the high-rise buildings and all, but they couldn't shoot for shit. But it took me literally a few minutes to realize that, hey, holy shit, they're really shooting at us. Because I remember I asked Fulse, he was my AG, I was like, what the fuck's that noise? Excuse my language. And he was like, I think they're shooting at us, Sergeant. You know, like, and you know, oh crap. So, you know, start and then get my guns up and all. And what I'll tell you is what I learned that day was, and a first sergeant told me this in Hawaii, because I asked him, how do you know if you're ready for combat? He's like, if you get shot at and you do your job without thinking about it, then you're a combat soldier and you're ready for combat.
Mm-hmm.
And truthfully, all those years of battle drills and everything else, that's all we did, man. We just reacted, and we kicked the crap out of them, which was cool. It was good for us. But later on down the road, 10 months later, when I made the 7 list while we were deployed, and I got given a platoon. Then 2 months after I took my platoons, when I got hit, and the bad guys actually had a hit out on me and my buddy
Really?
Cavazos. Yeah, because back then they knew your areas, your platoon sectors. So, and it was a routine going to check on some dudes at the Al Rashid Bank and Outdoor Market, and I went with my new PL, and we went and checked, and coming back right in the market, like right there at the power substations when they hit us. And I still look back on that
Jeez.
today, and I still don't understand how I didn't see it coming, you know. And that was the second IED to hit the 82nd. So we didn't even
Man.
really. I mean, we were learning about IEDs, but we didn't really know. Fortunately for me, the assholes hadn't perfected it yet. So it was 5.155 rounds, but it was under the asphalt, so the asphalt took a lot of the blast. And we
Wow.
didn't have any up armored vehicles or nothing. Um, but that day truly it molded me into the guy I was the rest of my Army career, because it made me understand that no matter how good you are, no matter how much of a badass you are, the enemy always gets a vote.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure your freaking head's on a swivel and you got your shit tight. So yeah,
That's interesting.
yeah, it was OF1 was it was different because we took out the Army the first few months, and then we went into sustainment operations. And then we started raiding every night, taking Fedayeen journals and all that stuff. So it really wasn't like it was a lot of work. But if people ask me today if I would choose Iraq or Afghanistan, I'd choose Iraq any day of the week,
Mm-hmm.
because one, the assholes couldn't fight that good, and two, we could find them a lot easier and we could fix them. Um, and my second deployment to Iraq was basically we got called up for the DRF for the elections into Baghdad to clear out Highway 8. We got there December. While we were there, they said the commandos were back. That's what they called us and all that shit. Nothing happened. And then Camp Stryker got bombed up in Mosul, and then we got sent up there to go fight with the 25th. And I will tell you, that was the Wild West, but that was the kind of stuff you expect in the military. And it's people's like, it's so tough. I'm like, realistically, that was one of the easiest deployments I had, because the bad guys were coming out trying to fight us every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But deployments wise, and I don't want to like go up, but I will tell you this, man. My first deployment to Afghanistan, RC East, there was some stuff going on, but it wasn't bad. You know what I mean? Like it was more, a lot of traveling, a lot of patrolling, but not a lot of action.
Mm-hmm.
My fourth deployment, we were the main effort for the battalion. My company we got sent down to Helmand when the big offensive was going on there, September, October, November of 09. So we were down there with the Marines and the Brits shooting it up. Then we got battle space to come into the Arghandab River Valley in Kandahar. And I could talk for hours about Kandahar, but what I will tell you is all the shit I had seen, everything I had been through, all the training I had done, we could have never anticipated what that place was like. Like it was, like literally it was hell, man. Like, to be a first sergeant and every day wondering which guy's going to lose a leg or which guy's going to do this, and forcing yourself to be out with them, knowing that the odds are against you, man. Like it was just, I don't know, man. And that's why, like, even now, I really, really, really keep up with those guys. I think more than the rest of my guys, because, dude, I'm telling you, man, I could sit here and tell stories all day long, but, and in Afghanistan or wherever, if I'm in this valley and you're in this valley, yeah, we know we were in combat, but our fights were totally different. So it's hard to explain, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, out of everything I've been through, man, that deployment was the only one that I thought that I was going to die. Like, I honestly thought I wasn't coming back because I thought the odds were against me. And then my last deployment, I deployed as a brigade ops sergeant major, and I got jacked because it was the first time I ever got to live on a fob and use a gym, and I freaking, you know, just scuffed people up for being out of uniform and shit. But yeah, it was a totally different, because we went and we were training the Afghan, you know, at SFAT. And just real quick, I'll get off from it, but we went to JRTC beforehand, and I was at Fort Polk in the 10th Mountain, and that was the hardest JRTC deployment I ever had. Deploying a JRTC from JRTC was ridiculous. If you don't know what that is, that's Joint Readiness Training Center, Fort Polk, Louisiana. But anyway, they originally had me on the list to be an advisor for a sergeant major, and a week into our JRTC rotation, the ops group, I think it was the CSM then, and my brigade commander and everybody else, like, Sergeant Major, you're not going to be an advisor. You'll just run the TOC. I was like, yeah, roger that. Because, you know, I mean, I just couldn't, that wasn't who I was, man. But yeah, man, I mean, you know, we could all, you know, I could tell war stories all day long, just like you guys, you know, everything. But what I will say is, if you get a chance, Google Helmand September 09, and then Google the Arghandab River Valley Kandahar December of 2009 on, and you'll see. I mean, the bad thing was we didn't have a lot of reporters or anything out there because it was too dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But I could tell you guys, and we could do that offline, but stories that would blow your mind. You're like, how the hell did that happen? But anyway, in short, that's kind of my deployments. I will say, in this war, this tattoo right here, I got 25 parachutes for 25 of my brothers, and then, you know, my soldiers that I lost. Fortunately for me, under my command, I only lost 3, but buddies with me or some of my soldiers that were in different platoons and all over the years. And then the hardest thing for me to after all that crap is I've had 15 kill themselves, you know, over the years. And yeah, man, I mean, it's, and you try to, like I said, you try to rationalize it, you try to understand, and
15.
Really, yeah,
that's 15. Insane.
Yep,
like one is too many.
What's that?
I said one is too many, and then you hear 15.
Well, you got to figure, man, when you stay in, you know, almost 25 years, and you know so many guys, and then, you know, it's just like some of them, and you guys know this too, you see some guys that get out and they just can't handle life, period. Mm-hmm. Not so much just the military, but it's just life. But then there are other ones, like we all talk about, like, you know, I just talked to him last night, he was good, and then the next morning he's gone, you know.
Jeez.
Yeah, so yeah, I got a lot of baggage, man, but I'm trying to use it for good and not the woe is me type crap, you know.
I think that's all you can do. And I think that's the important thing, is why we have these podcasts is, you know, it's obviously to educate, you know, people like myself, other civilians, but also for veterans to have a space to come to listen to their stories that are hopefully going to impact them, and that they can, you know, maybe put some plots together, you know, that they're very similar in that regard to the men and women that have fought beside them, or the stories that we're sharing. So I think it's important to hear a little bit about your deployments, but no, I agree. We don't need to go down the typical rabbit hole. Those stories have been told and will be continuing to be told.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I'm curious, kind of an offhand, more fun question, because you mentioned it earlier. Obviously people looking, they can see you have a Mastodon t-shirt on.
Yeah.
Where did your love from metal come from? Where did that stem?
Well, when I was a little kid, because I was born in 73, so I'll tell you how old I am. When I was a little kid, my dad.
Damn, you do not look like it. You do not look like from 73.
my dad, you know, he listened to like the stuff from the 60s, you know, like Iron Butterfly and freaking the Stones, you know, different stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I don't know, I might have been 6, 7 years old. I saw a Kiss 8-track and I kept whining to my dad, I want that, because it looked so cool. So I got Kiss, and then as I got a little bit older, started listening to like Van Halen and all. And what really turned me into a true metalhead was I want to say it was '84. One of my buddies, big brother, we were riding in his car, and I was only 10, 11 years old, and he had freaking Metallica Kill 'Em All on. And I was like,
That's a
oh
great
my
one.
God, what the hell is that? I never heard anything like that. And then I heard it, and then I just like, it became like an obsession. Like I'd have to, raking leaves and doing everything else to give me some money, just go to the record store. And then I would buy like metal albums just because of how cool the cover looked.
Yep.
And sometimes it was hit or miss. Sometimes it was good. Other times it was shit. But yeah, man, it hit me as a little kid. And like, it's one of those things, like a lot of people have, all these different, you got your hobby, you got whatever, but like metal to me, man, it's like, it's like therapy to me, man. It's, I don't fault anybody else for other music, but, people would think I'm a country guy because I'm from Louisiana. I'm definitely not a country guy. But metal, what's so cool about metal to me is like, and then as you get older, you kind of understand it, but it's kind of like the veteran community, like the metal community. It doesn't matter where you came from, what your background is. If you go to a show, everybody's cool,
Yeah.
And people are there to be a part of that experience. And, I had, when I was a kid, I don't know if you guys probably don't remember it, but they had the '80s satanic panic going on, where all the
Yeah, I do.
moms and everybody were acting like all their kids were devil worshippers and all this crap.
Yep.
So I had like a Slayer poster up, and you got to take that down, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, and then my dad saved me because he's like, here's the deal. He watches horror movies all the time. It's the same crap. If he was a sociopath, he'd be a sociopath either way. So let the kid do what he wants to do, like, because for me, it was like the Scary Bands was like a horror movie, man. It was just like, I wanted to see what they were going to say but yeah, man, it's, and I use it a lot in the Army, like I got kids. I would, like, even when I was a sergeant major, we didn't jam the normal crap when we were doing freaking, battalion runs and shit. We had some freaking Pantera, Slayer, freaking Megadeth,
I was about to ask you if you were the DJ for
oh yeah,
like in the ready room before
like,
missions and stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh, I made my S6 knew exactly. We weren't doing the Taylor Swift and the freaking all the other crap that everybody does. We were doing, because like I told dudes, I'm like, this shit should motivate you, like. But yeah, I love it, man. Like my wife says I'm never gonna grow up, and I was like, hey, that might be the case, but
what's funny about that though is, so I listen to metal when I work out, and I grew up with it. My dad was like the same thing. His favorite band was Kiss, was into Metallica, all that stuff. So I kind of went from hearing Metallica, and hearing all that stuff, and then it kind of transitioned when I was like really young. I think I was like in 9th grade. I was like on the bus to school listening to like Lamb of God and like Devil Driver and like stuff like that, and Megadeth and all those. And for some reason, people would listen to him like, that's going to make you an angry kid. And I'd go to shows every weekend and like go to like these like death metal concerts, like you said, they got like the crazy fonts, like in blood and stuff like that. And it honestly, most people I spoke to, that was their outlet. And like a lot of the people I talked to were like very like intelligent people, and they weren't like full of anger or hatred. Maybe there was mosh pits, people got hurt, but they'd get picked right back up. And it was just a fun time for people to like escape from society a little bit.
Yeah. It's like, it's like I've been to country concerts with people, other stuff. And like I said, when you go to a metal show, like a real metal show, like people are focused on the band and the music.
Yeah.
And I've caught myself in the last couple of years before COVID. My old ass was in the mosh pit a few times with a couple of my buddies, because I have two buddies. One's a retired colonel and the other one's a retired sergeant major, and they're both super metalheads like me. So every year we try to get together and go to a show. But yeah, man, I mean, like for me, it's just, and it's really cool too. Like when I go to these things and like the young kids start talking to me and all, and they're like, "Holy crap, man, you're cool as shit," like because it's like, dude, it's like it just speaks to me, and and since I've been retired, man, I've been able to meet some of my heroes in metal and actually become friends with them and all. And it's pretty crazy, man.
What were some of
That's
those
awesome.
stories of like people that you've met?
Well, like I think the coolest guy I met, and he's not a metal singer, but he hosts Liquid Metal and Octane, Jose Mangan. I don't know if you guys listen to that.
Yeah.
The metal ambassador, Jose. So I met him through Carla Harvey from the Butcher Babies. And I do a lot of nonprofit work. And I met him. He had me on the radio out at the Affliction headquarters in LA back in 17 for Metal in the Military Week.
I've seen that studio. When I went and met up with Ben, who obviously runs Howitzer.
Yeah.
That's based in that same warehouse as Affliction. I remember walking through and taking the tour and seeing the XM radio station there where all
did you see the stage and all they had built back
there? Yeah.
Well, anyway,
that's a bitchin' setup.
But I met Jose, and the coolest thing is when I met the guy, like the only thing he said was, "Dude, how can I help you out, man? Like, what do you guys need?" And then and so anyway, long story short, he had me on there, and then he was like, "Dude, we're gonna figure out something to do something." So like a month later, I was back here, and I get a call, and it was Jose Mangan. He was like, "Hey, dude, I want to do a taco metal party at the Affliction headquarters, and give the money. We'll do like some silent auction stuff or whatever. But the band Otherwise, I don't know if you've heard of them, but they sing Soldiers, and they're out of LA." He was like, "Yeah, man, they're gonna do a album release party, and they said they'd be all about it." So anyway, I went and brought I think 6 of my old guys. Most of them live in California. They were amputees and stuff. And anyway, long story short, we hung out all night, partied it up. I got to see, this is how much of a metal nerd I am. Like I saw Eddie from King. He's like best friends with Jose, but I saw him like standing off to the side, and I was like, "That's freaking Eddie from King, man." And people were like, "Who the hell's King? What is that?" And I went up and I was like, "Hey, dude, I ain't fanboying out or nothing. I don't do that shit." I was like, I love your music, man." He's like, "Dude, you know the fuck I am?" And I was like, "Yeah." You're freaking. Well, anyway, at about 11 o'clock, all the civilians left, and me and the boys stayed with Jose and King, and we jammed, and I got to sing War Pigs by Black Sabbath with King.
That's awesome.
Awesome. But I got a little video of that I've posted on my, but yeah, man, he's a really, really awesome guy that truly gives a shit about veterans and all, and
a lot of them do a lot of support.
Yeah,
a lot of metal bands support a lot of veterans.
Well, I mean, I could tell you a lot of stories, but for time, I'll tell you the coolest, other than meeting Jose, and if you ever go back through my stuff, you'll see all the guys I've got to meet and hang out with. But so I was at Ozfest in 2017 in San Bernardino.
Was that the last one?
What's that?
Was that the last one?
It was the last one they had before COVID and all. They're actually starting to back up. Well, it was Ozfest. Ozfest meets Knotfest.
Yep. Okay.
Well, anyway, I was there. Elaine Reese and her husband John, they run SG Entertainment, so they run all the big festivals. And I'd reached out to her because I was doing some nonprofit stuff, and I was like, "Hey, we'd like to have a booth out there, just try to get the word out on what we're doing." She's like, "Hell yeah!" So we went out there. Jose was hosting it. I had Nick Quijano and Sagan Emery. They're married. Nick used to be the lead guitarist for Powerman 5000. I met him through some other stuff. We became buddies. So they came to help run the booth. But anyway, first off, at Ozfest meets Knotfest, I would say 70% of that place was veterans. And there was 40,000 people there. Like, it was crazy.
40,000?
Yeah. So anyway, the second night of the festival, when Stone Sour and Rob Zombie were headlining, right? We close the booth down every day at 6, and then we go watch shows. Well, Lainey comes up to me and she's like, "What are you guys doing tonight?" I was like, "We're going to watch the show." She's like, "Well, meet me and Jose by the main entrance. I had my wife, my buddy Jared, he's missing his right arm. They're like, come meet us there. We got something cool. And I was like, all right, cool. They're going to let us go backstage or something. So anyway, we meet them. They bring us backstage, right? And I'm seeing like all these badass metal singers are like my heroes and on. I'm like, don't fanboy out. Don't fanboy out. Don't be that guy. Can I take a picture? I was like, don't be that guy. Just be cool. And, we got to talk to Rob Zombie, but he was in a hurry, so I didn't take pictures with him. But Sherry was with him, believe it or not. But the coolest thing is I'm sitting here. I mean, the Death Angel guys were in there, freaking, I hear this voice behind me, and my buddy Jared's right here, and my wife, and I was like, "That's Corey Taylor." And if you don't know who Corey Taylor is, somebody already slapped the crap out of you.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was like, "That's Corey Taylor," because his voice is unmistakable. And I'm not kidding you. No sooner than I said that, this little short guy comes up, puts his hand on my shoulder, and is like, "Is this the guy?" And I was like, "The hell?" And it was Corey Taylor, and he's like, "Dude, we got something awesome for you." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Man, for all you do and all you've done," he's like, "this is the least we could do." And I was like, "What?" And you just sit there and talk with me like forever. And then anyway, they still didn't tell me what was going on. So I'm thinking we're going to watch the show from side stage, right? So we go out there. Well, anyway, John, the guy that runs the show, and Jose, when I was side stage, they didn't tell me, but they're out there like, hey, Mac, come on out here. And I was like, 40,000 people, man, at Ozfest.
Holy shit.
So I go out on stage, and they were like, "Hey, dude, the boys in Stone Sour and us, we just want to do something really cool for you, man." And they told all the stuff. He's got this. He's a war hero. Like, no, but yeah, I got given a signed guitar by Corey Taylor and all of Stone Sour in front of 40,000 people.
What?
Damn,
yeah, that's insane.
Real quick and show you guys.
Yeah, I want to see that.
Yeah.
Hold on a second.
That's incredible.
The time so that you can, or it's going to be on your time. 105. Dude.
That's it.
That is sick.
That's incredible.
Yeah, here's one of the pictures when I was hanging with Corey Taylor.
Wow.
Dude, that's awesome.
Dude.
I think a lot of people would kill for that opportunity.
No kidding.
Oh yeah. Well, that's why I told
I'm a little jealous.
Leave my family. But like Stone Sour 2017.
That's a clean guitar too.
Oh yeah, it's never been used.
I'd keep it that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I figured
get like an acrylic
that was
frame.
A cool story to tell, because as an old grunt and all, you don't expect stuff like that, like
no.
Yeah.
But
was that pretty intimidating too to like walk out to initially?
Yeah,
I can imagine.
40,000 people. Oh yeah.
I get stage fright sometimes in front of like 100 people.
And I mean, I could show you pictures because my wife and them got pictures from behind, which is pretty awesome. Where I'm like this, and you see like all the people. But I also Jose's friend did professional pictures and all too. But like, man, it was like for me just being a metalhead my whole life, and to me, and like I said, I've met a lot of my heroes who genuinely give a shit about us, man. That's pretty awesome. Like, because like I told him, I was like, just that, like even my boys and otherwise, now we're really good friends. And anytime they come into town, they hit me up like, "Hey dude, you got any veteran bros that want to come hang out with us or whatever?" Because like to them, they're like, "Hey dude, you guys did all that shit. At least we could do is just freaking buy you a whiskey and like I told them, I'm like, a lot of times for dudes like us, just you guys taking the time just to talk, man, is like, it's soul cleansing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was
it's funny you mentioned that, as you're getting older, you kind of stay away from the mosh pits. I remember, I think every weekend we'd go to shows. I had like a group of people we thought were like the coolest kids ever. We had a group called like Loveless. And I remember like there was like, I don't know, 20 of us kids that would just go to shows and like beat down on other kids in the mosh pit and then pick them up. And there was one day, I don't know if you've heard of Terror, but there was it's like a metal band. And I remember I had my nose. Terror, yeah.
Yeah, I know what Terror is.
Yeah, so I broke my nose at that concert. And just, I don't know, for some reason, like wasn't looking up or something like that. And someone's hand came up and hit me in the nose and broke my septum. And I barely even felt it, but I had a bloody nose the whole show. And I just stayed right there and kept rocking out.
That's the way you got to do it, man. Like Exodus said, the toxic waltz, man. Bang your head against the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's an awesome story.
yeah. I mean, that was like for me, man. Like just being an old grunt and all that crap. That was one of the coolest things ever that anybody's ever done for me, man. Like it was just like that thing will. And I already told my daughters and everybody it's going to be in my will that it never leaves the family.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
cool. If funny enough, I think you lightly touched on it when we met, but you and I share the same love for a few veteran organizations, and I'm curious to hear your experience with Helicopters for Heroes.
Dude, that was Helicopters for Heroes was one of the, I'd say the top three organizations I've done anything with since I've been
Yeah.
retired, man. And I think what I really like about those guys is, they're not getting anything. They're doing it for other organizations, but the coolest thing is, man, you bring a bunch of veterans together and let them ride on little birds and crap and shoot hogs. And
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, hell, man, I had one of my guys, Jared Lemon, the first time I went, he's missing his right arm, man, and he outshot me shooting hogs, you know. But yeah, man, it's like I went out there. We had
Down in
I think,
Texas, right?
yeah, 9 of my guys out in Enos, Texas, back in 17 was the first time, and then I went again in 18 the next year. What's really awesome about it, man, is you get to, you're out there in Texas. There's all these rich guys that show up that want to eat with the veterans and check out the concert and all, but the guys get to see that, there's no, it's all it is a bunch of veterans hanging out, man, really, like truthfully, and getting to shoot guns and there's no, you can't drink beer, you can't do this, you can do whatever because the dudes out there are like, this is for you guys, man. But the cool thing about it, like I said, is they pick different organizations every year to actually give the proceeds to, and and I'm pretty sure they make quite a bit of money too. This thing just fell, but yeah, they
Well, I think the owner, I could be mistaken, but I believe he's a billionaire.
Oh yeah, he is.
And I know that Jake and Samantha that work there are the two that I usually speak to. I haven't talked to them for a little while, but yeah, I mean, they're all great people that work for them.
Like Samantha, she was the one that I spoke to the first couple times. Phil's the guy who headed it. He's the billionaire.
Yep.
I think he used to be the CEO at Interscope Records. And
yep, I've talked to him and Jake on the phone before. I think a while ago. I only spoke to Phil once, and then it kind of went through Jake and Samantha.
But yeah, man, they're all about, that's why I got a couple buddies who have organizations. I'm like, hit those guys up and try to do some stuff. But right now, man, I've been working with Heart Support.
Okay.
So I don't know if you've guys heard of them, but basically, so Jacob Lures from August Burns Red started it. But now they're partnering with Tim from the Veterans Project on a project called Heart Support Vets. And so I went out to Pennsylvania a few weeks ago, did they call it a speech. I don't do speeches. I just talk to people. But we did that. And then I'm actually going Wednesday to Blue Ridge Fest. We have a booth set up out there. And I think the number 4 stage is the Heart Support stage. But what I like about what they're trying to do with the Heart Support Vets is take what they're doing with Heart Support and take these digital assets that they have and start pushing it through the veteran community because, hell, we're the worst at. Everybody says, call your buddy. Like, how many of us actually going to call somebody if we need help? Hardly any of us. So it's pretty cool, man. But yeah, Helicopters for Heroes that's what I said. I would go back there 100 times, dude. It was just amazing.
I don't think many people would pass up flying around in little birds and shooting hogs.
No,
out in Texas. I've told Dan about it. I was like, we gotta go the next time they do it because I know our friend Emily has been out there. She's one of the co-hosts of Fox News, and then she's covered it quite a bit. And then we have another veteran, Kevin Brewington, who's in our book, who is a double amputee, and he was out there flying around and doing the same thing. I don't know if he was there the same year as you. He might have been.
I think I met him. I think I kind of, yeah.
Actually, now I think about it, there's Josh Stein and Kevin Brewington. Both lost their legs, and they were out there, I believe, the same time.
Yeah, that's where it's actually where I met Steven, the writer and director of the movie I'm in.
Mm.
Yeah.
Is this the horror movie?
That's what I was just thinking.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that, because I'm intrigued how that kind of got.
People are kind of like horror movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, man, like so like I said, I was out of Helicopters for Heroes, and we were out there. It was one of the days we're going to helicopters, and I saw this guy, and I'm like, I was looking at one of my guys. I'm like, that dude looks so familiar, man. And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, nah, he looks familiar, dude. And I was like, I know him from somewhere. And then I walked up closer, and I was like, holy shit, that's a dude off of White Chicks. And
which
so
one?
If you ever seen the movie, you know the little guy, party boy, that wakes up in bed with Terry Crews.
Oh yeah.
Screaming, that's him. So
that's funny.
He was actually out there because his buddy at the time was one of the board members for 22 Kill.
Mm.
And we just met, man, just kind of, hit it off talking. And I think what blew his mind, because he had met all these different veterans and everything. And then he's talking to me, and I basically didn't tell him who I was, but the guys that were with him was like, that dude's a command sergeant major, man. He's like, and so anyway, he hit me up and was like, yeah, man, we got to keep in touch, blah, blah. So I don't know, maybe 6 months, 8 months later, I did a honor flight with him out in DC, with some World War II vets. Mm-hmm. And then, well, he actually came to the event that Jose Mangan put on for me, because it was right there in California. And then, like 2 summers ago, he called me up. It was like midnight one night, and he's like, hey, I got this idea for I'm writing this script, and there's only one person I could think of to play this part, and that's you. And I was like, dude, I don't know how to act. He's like, I'm directing, you'll be fine. So anyway, he had this idea for a horror thriller about a Native American curse up in Massachusetts. And he wrote me in as the hiker, drifter / killer that gets possessed by a demon. And mainly it was because I'm really good at throwing tomahawks and all. So that's kind of where it came from. But yeah, man, it actually premieres October 8th on video on demand and in theaters.
Really?
Wow.
And we're doing the actual premiere in Massachusetts on October 9th.
Up near Salem?
Yeah, Turner's Falls.
Okay.
I don't know how far from Salem that is, but that's where they're doing it.
What's it called? So people want to watch it.
The Secret of Cincinnati. It's Sinchanee. It's about
as in the Native American nation.
And you get to see me shirtless, covered in blood, with like black eyes. So it's pretty cool.
With the beard and hair and the mohawk and everything?
Oh, the beard was crazy because they didn't want me to shave anything. And then all the tattoos are covered up. And Rudy Reyes and Rudy's in it. I know you guys know who Rudy Reyes is.
Yep.
But, we do I guess you could say like spiritual battle. He's like a shaman, and I'm the demon. So it's pretty. It came out really cool, man. It looks really like it's going to be. I think people are going to dig it.
That's awesome. It's such a random thing to hear. I was just thinking, what movie I could see you in, and it probably goes with some just more of your fan or being a fan of like metals. I could almost see you like in a Devil's Rejects movie.
Oh yeah, I would do it. Well, I've been offered another part in another movie that should start filming, he said, early next year. And yeah, I'll be a lead bank robber. So go figure.
Oh, really?
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess
you're making your way up.
But like you look at, everything that I've done, man, like I haven't, since I've been retired, and that's what I tell a lot of guys is I haven't went out looking for these things. I've been myself, and I've had these really cool opportunities and got to meet some really great people. And when you do, man, when you meet people and you're just you, man, and they see the transparency and all, You know, you'll make friends that really actually appreciate you for who you are, not for what you've done or what you're doing. Like, I mean, hell, dude, who'd have thunk, you know, an old retired command sergeant major would be a damn in a horror movie killing people, you know, like it's, you know, you don't expect any of that stuff, but
No, not at all.
But to your point, it's like when you're authentic and you know you're just being yourself, it's very easy to make those relationships, to like connect with people. And then it's just strange how it kind of happens. We talk about it all the time, especially with this book, how many people we've run into that know each other or like have crossed into each other or whatever the connections have been. It's been bizarre to make them, to realize how small the world is. But I think things like that just happen to really rise to the top when people are just, you're not out to get anything. You're just out there to just be yourself and connect with people and you know, and see how you can help each other out.
yeah, man. I mean, that's like, truthfully, man, if we could all, especially our community, if we could all just be, hey, dude, just be yourself, you know, be transparent about a lot of the crap you deal with, and know that you're not going to be judged by anybody, then we would be so much better off, man. And like with that, you know, I figured out Instagram and all that crap. You know, an old dude. I mean, I'm not no Insta famous dude or nothing, but I got like 6,000 followers or whatever, and a lot of them hit me up all the time, and you know, and I see these other guys, and people ask me if I follow them and all, and I don't, because I see so many dudes on there trying to be like this badass persona and all that shit. It's like, dude, just be you, man. Like, all the crap we've done in our lives, if you got to sit there and portray this character and act like this freaking dude, then obviously you're not as bad as you thought you were from the start, you know?
Yeah.
I get it. People got to make a living and crap, but yeah, man. I mean, I've met in the community, especially in the Insta famous community, I've met some really good people, but I've also met some turds. I'll just say that. You know,
That
like,
comes with it.
yeah, you know, and it is what it is. I get it, man. But you know what I'm trying to do, man, is, at least what I'm doing when I talk to people or when I go to things, is I'm trying to let these kids, for lack of a better term, know that, hey, dude, I deal with the same problems you guys do. You know, like, just because I was the dude that looked like I had my shit together in the army, you know, the dude walking around that everybody don't want to talk to, I was probably worse off than a lot of these guys, you know, and and I got to do this on here because I do it on every podcast I'm on. I got to throw shade at my peers, man. Where are my peers talking to these guys about their issues and telling them, hey, dude, it's okay, man. Like, when we were in, I'd have told you to suck it the fuck up. But now what I'll tell you is, you gotta figure out what's going on with you. You gotta face whatever it is. I can be there to help you all day long, but at the end of the day, if you're not gonna sit there and face it, man, then I can't help you.
Yeah.
And dude, that was, for me, one of the hardest things I ever did was facing those demons, man. Like, and I still face them every day. But but letting these kids know that, you know, we need dudes like me out there, because I mean, think about it, dude. Like, you know, when you're in combat, who's the guy you look up to? Even though you might think he's an asshole, but you know he's out there on the ground with you and he's gonna freaking get you through it. But if he's the guy that's still out, that gets out and is, my shit's all together, blah blah blah, then you're gonna be like, I guess I'm just all fucked up. Excuse my language, you know. And it's like, dude, no, we all are.
Yeah.
But that's okay. You know, like, the crap that we've seen and the crap we've been through, we're never gonna be the people we were before. But that's okay. You
Yeah.
know? But we can live with it, and we can thrive with it, not just live and not just survive, but thrive, man. Just being yourself and being open, man. And that's one of the hardest things for me to understand. Like I said, my first year out, it was hard for me to be open about anything, because I still had that, everybody looks up to me, I got to get my shit together, blah blah blah. So I don't know how many sergeants majors are listening to this, but if you are, get off your ass and freaking let these guys know what you're going through. because I know some of my buddies are going through it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
and
And that pretty
also,
much, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, and also, all you see is officers out there, you know, like as far as like senior people go in the Instagram community and all that crap. It's like, dude, get out there because you're the guys that these kids look up to, and
Mm-hmm.
they need us right now, man. But truthfully, dudes like me need them more than they need me, you know.
It's interesting you to say that because I was just about to say, as we wrap up, and I wanted to bring up this topic, but you already kind of nailed on it. Um, Especially with the recent events, we started with it. I kind of want to end on a shorter note for this podcast with you, but for the recent events happening in Afghanistan, and now, supposedly the war being over and veterans are going to soon be transitioning into the civilian world, what would be your recommendation on, just based on your lengthy military career and what you've had to go through? This is kind of the time that veterans need to come together and civilians need to come together to help support veterans as well. This is kind of that time frame where we can almost be the generation of Vietnam, or you can be the generation of World War II that went out and changed their community. How can veterans start to focus on doing that and be better in their community?
Well, I can tell you what none of us understand, and I've spoke to people in DOD and everything else about transition. You know, people talk about how the military should do a better job of transitioning guys and gals. That sounds good in theory, but truthfully, there's no way to do that because at
Yeah.
the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, the military is about readiness. So if you're one of my guys and you're getting out, I make sure you got your award, I make sure you got your leave, everything's good. But once you're out, then what am I focused on? Filling that slot. And that's just the
Mm-hmm.
nature of the beast.
Yep.
But what we can do is, and a lot of guys, especially, and I say guys and gals too, but I'm so used to being around dudes in the infantry, is a lot of, for lack of a better term, man, a lot of veterans get out feeling entitled.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the reason I say that is because they either saw it when they were young and then came in, or when the war was raging, all these organizations throwing all this stuff at, and people are just thanking you for your service and all that stuff. And you kind of have in your head, when I get out, life's going to be easy. Everybody's going to appreciate everything I've done and all that stuff. And in reality, nobody owes you shit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, you signed up to do a job, you volunteered for it. The only person that truly owes you something is you.
Yeah.
So
Very true.
my advice to you as you're getting out is, and I had a sergeant major tell me this when I fought through my injuries, and he told me, and I never really understood it until like my last few months in the Army. He said, once you either are getting out or once you're retiring, there's only one person in the Army that gives a shit about you, and that's you. And he's like, if you can understand that, then you would take care of yourself for getting out and then, doing what you have to do afterwards. But the thing about it is, transitioning out, just remember, first off, the grass is always greener till you get out. You might not have somebody yelling at you, telling you what time to get up and all that stuff, but at the same time, you're going to miss that.
Mm-hmm.
But two, know that, like I said before, while you're in, everything you did was for everybody else.
Mm.
Regardless of how you think, every single thing that you did was for everybody else. Every second you breathe while you're in the military, you did for everybody else. Now that you're transitioning out, you have to take a step back and say, what am I doing for me? And I know you got a family, you got all this, you got to get a job, you got to do whatever, but you have to take a step back and say, I'm not going to have this anymore. So what am I going to do for me so I can move forward and be the guy or gal that I want to be? And if you can do that, then your loved ones and everybody around you will be so much better off. And oh, by the way, I tell people, you got to make it. You got to make a living, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you get a job and you're doing something you hate, do it until you can find something that you love.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and 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 the other thing is, and I will say this too before we get off, because I've had a lot of guys hit me up over the years too that have never been to combat. They have just as many issues as we do when you think about it. A lot of them it's guilt for getting out or this or that. But at the end of the day, man, what we did in the military was what we did. Now, what are we as human beings, as veterans, as Americans? What are we doing for us tomorrow, today and tomorrow? Like, and if you can just look at it in terms of, I got to serve me for a little bit, you'll be okay. But at the same time, that's easy to say, but it's hard to do.
Yeah.
That makes sense, man. And then, and the other thing, for kids getting out, like I said, the grass is always greener. You got all these, all this stuff that you think people owe you or whatever. Set your conditions, just like when you're on patrol or anything else. You make sure you have systems in place to accomplish that mission or to be successful, right? So do the same thing now that you're getting out, because life is going to be harder. It is. It just is, because yeah, you don't have somebody yelling at you, but you also don't have somebody yelling at you. So that makes it harder, to tell you what to wear, where to be, what to do. And yeah, and the other, just be you, to be happy and do life for you, man. Like, because the lives that we lead, man, we are so good. We are such good advocates for everybody but ourselves. And that was so hard for me to understand, man. Like, now I'm at a point in my life to where I'm not saying I'm happy every day. I'm not saying I'm fixed. But what I am saying is I'm in control. Like, if I'm in a bad place, I know it. And I know how to remove myself from that. I know how to, because I'm self-aware. So just think about all those things as you're transitioning out. And it's a lot. And I'm telling you, from an old dude, I'm not talking from a 20-something-year-old guy's perspective, but I'm talking about from an old dude who did everything I did in the Army. Like, I can tell you this, how many people actually gave a shit about what I did in the Army? If I talk to most civilians and tell them I was a command sergeant major in the 82nd Airborne Division, do you think they have a clue of what I did?
No.
So, yeah. So with that said, man, just, you got to do it for you.
It's interesting to hear your perspective. I know people listening, they hear this every week, but I think it's important that we hear every veteran's perspective on that topic. I mean, we really want to drill this into people's heads, that it's kind of like, every episode you want to listen to it and you want to hear more and more about transition, because I know some people will hear it and it's still going to be difficult, but it's interesting to hear your perspective and maybe the things you've been through.
Yeah, man. Just, I could tell you, soldier for life, have your resume ready and all this stuff, but all that's the easy stuff. That's the stuff we're good at. We're good at doing a job. Like, if we get a job, we're great at that. What we're not great at, I'd say we're terrible at, is understanding that we got to do something for ourselves now.
Yeah.
We might say we're doing it, but we're truly not. Like, even me, when I got out of the Army, I want to do the nonprofit thing and all that stuff, but I was focusing on everybody else and not myself.
Yeah.
And I wasn't being any good to anybody around me because I wasn't focusing on myself for a little bit. Like my buddy Rudy said, you have to be a little self-centered, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. Well, I mean, it's like when you're training like basic leadership principles, you have to lead yourself before you can be an effective leader for others. And it's something that, I hope a lot of people start picking that up from all these stories, like Bo was saying, of transition, because everybody's transition is different. But I think the one thing that is common amongst all of them is that the individual had to take the initiative. The individual had to do something to make it a positive transition, or to, recoup from maybe some missteps in the transition. And it was always the individual who had to make that change.
Yeah, that's what I've learned, man, is it had to be me. Like, nobody could do it for me. And if you can come to terms with that, then you can get through it, man.
Yeah. Well, Don, we can't thank you enough for taking the time tonight to be on the show. I know we've kept in touch, obviously, with having you in the book, but we look forward to really keeping in touch with you going forward. And again, can't thank you enough for sharing your words of wisdom and your thoughts on everything.
No, man, thank you guys, dude. Like I said, man, I really appreciate you having me. And anytime I get to talk is good for me because I just get to talk, man. And
Yeah.
it's like talking to soldiers again. But yeah, man, for you guys, thank y'all for what you're doing. Like I said, the book is awesome, and there's so many kids out there that don't have a voice. They feel like, but when they do hear things like this and stuff like that, they know they do have a voice.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I love the title, "Never Left Behind," man.
Yeah.
You know, you never leave anybody behind, but at the same time, you have to lead by example. So that's another thing I would say too, is just like you said, brother Dan, is leading by example is kind of doing what I'm doing right now, what you guys are doing. Be open, be transparent, let people know the struggles you're facing, because they may not have to go through those same struggles because they learn a little bit from you. So
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for everything, Don. And again, we look forward to keeping in touch with you.
thank you guys, man.